What is up, everybody? Mr. Purtis here. Welcome to unit number 2, which is on Age of Revolutions. So we're going to see a couple political revolutions in this unit. And before I even tell you what they are, just a quick reminder on what revolutions are. We talked about the scientific revolution in the last time period, or the last unit, and it's basically just a big change where things are different from what they were before the revolution to after. Sometimes they can be non-political revolutions like the Neolithic Revolution and the scientific. They didn't really change political structures per se. And then in this case, we're going to talk about actual political revolutions. Revolutions that happen that overthrow a government, and what it was like before is going to be totally different than what it is like afterwards. So the first revolution that we're going to talk about is the French Revolution, and then we'll get into the Latin American revolutions, which includes South America, Mexico, and Haiti. So let's get started here. This is the French Revolution. This is kind of the, one of the main revolutions that has happened in human history in terms of political structure. It's going to influence future revolutions, including revolutions up to this day. A lot of people go back and study this revolution because it's so significant. So today's lesson is really just on the causes of it, what leads to this, what's going on in France ahead of time, and what's going to kind of take place and lead to these changes that are going to happen. So first thing, just a little background on France in 1789, because that's when the revolution happens. And coming over here, this is France right here. This is in Western Europe. And if you want to get kind of a zoom in version, this is the Kingdom of France here. It's right next to Spain. There's a Holy Roman Empire over here, Austria, etc. Here's the deal with France. France was a main player in the Age of Exploration. You should have learned about this last year. And as part of a main player in it, it's going to set up colonies throughout the world. And one of the main colonies is here in the Americas, in North America specifically. One of the main areas that France had control of was the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans right here, which is eventually going to have a state named after King Louis, which is called Louisiana. We also have an area over here that they control called India, but really their main colony, and just kind of something to point out, is this island right in here, which is called Haiti. Haiti shares an island with another country today called the Dominican Republic, but Haiti is really France's wealthiest colony. But France gets crazy rich. I'm talking crazy rich off of the Age of Exploration, because a lot of goods are going to be flowing back from the Americas into France. Now, as many of you know, eventually France is going to sell this piece of land here in what is called the Louisiana Purchase to the United States, but that hasn't happened yet. So these are the colonies we're looking at. So the thing to keep in mind here is, up to this point, France has a lot of money coming in, which is part of the reason why Louis XIV, the Sun King, was able to build his enormous empire. Also, just in terms of the causes, there's really 4 of them that we're going to look at, and 4 main things that are going to cause this French Revolution. The first one, kind of going back to what we've already talked about, is the Enlightenment. People are going to start questioning their government, and most of the Enlightenment, if you remember, takes place in France. Rousseau, Montesquieu, Voltaire, these are French people. And the French Revolution is going to be inspired by these Enlightenment ideas. This idea of what is the best kind of government? Should we have an absolute monarchy, which France does? And people are going to start questioning these ideas. Also, in the process of this Enlightenment happening, the first country to actually take on and use these Enlightenment ideas is the United States. So we have this ragtag group of 13 colonies who in 1776 declare independence from their mother country, England, and one of the reasons they did was because they felt they were being treated unfairly and they didn't have representation in Parliament. So the Americans in the American colonies rise up against the king and declare their independence, and eventually fight a war of independence, of which the French sent soldiers to help fight with the United States colonies and the United States in order to fight back against the British. And the Americans actually win. Obviously, I hope you know that. So these things, this Enlightenment and then the American Revolution, are going to inspire the French, who are going to say, if they could do it, if this little ragtag group of colonists, who we really don't have a lot of respect for, could rise up, what about us, the French people? The prideful French country, can we also do it? Can we use this inspiration from the Americas to also rise up ourselves? So this questioning of why not us is going to inspire kind of people to start rising up. But that can't be enough, because we can't just say we should do it. The question becomes, what are the conditions in France that are going to convince people to actually join this? And number one, we have a system that's been in place since the Middle Ages. It's called the estate system. Basically, France is broken up into 3 different estates. And when I say estates, think of 3 different social classes. So at the top here is the first estate. This is the Roman Catholic Church. Anyone who is, and it's not members of the Roman Catholic Church, they are the leaders of the Catholic Church. So bishops, monsignors, priests, nuns, they are part of this first estate. It's consistent, it's all the Roman Catholic Church. If you come over here to this side, you'll see that the first estate only makes up about 1% of the population. So we're talking a very tiny part of the population that makes up a huge percentage of actual what people own and what land is, which we'll get to in a second. The second estate is all the nobles. This is only about 2% of the population. So anyone who is a noble is part of this second estate. So the first estate and the second estate make up roughly 3% of the population. The other 97% of the population, everybody else makes up the third estate. The third estate is not just one big group. There's a lot of different social classes within the third estate. So we have this group called the bourgeoisie. I often like to think of them as being bougie. They're rich, they're wealthy, they have money. They're merchants, they could be lawyers, they could be doctors. They are skilled workers, people who have a talent that you need to, that other people just can't pick up and start taking on. Also, we have city workers. They are people who are generally paid very little. These would be cooks, these would be servants, these would be people, street sweepers, people who are working in the city, whether it's Paris, whether it's Lyon, they're working in these cities, and they are not necessarily making a lot of money. And last but not least, we have the peasants. Peasants make up 80% of the population. These are farmers. They rely on crops and buying crops and selling crops, and if it's a bad crop season, they go hungry. So all three of these groups make up the third estate. Here's where we get into the unfair system. The first estate and the second estate, 3% of the population and a very wealthy group of the population pay almost no taxes, zero, no taxes at all. This group down here, the third estate, generally pays about 50% of their income in taxes. To put that in perspective with the United States today, there are very few groups in the United States today, rich or poor, who pay 50% of their taxes, income in taxes. So in many ways, this is a hugely unfair system. And this has been going on in France for hundreds of years. And up to this point, no one has questioned it. But coming back to the Enlightenment, because of the Enlightenment, people are going to start saying, wait a second. Why are we the poor peasant farmers, or why are we these city workers, or why are we these wealthy bourgeoisie people paying 50% of our taxes when these nobles who own 20% of the land are paying nothing in taxes? That is just totally ridiculously unfair. So people are going to start questioning that. This is just two cartoons here that kind of show this estate system for my visual people. This is the, let's come over to this one. This right here is the Roman Catholic Church. And this is the nobles, and this is supposed to be the king, and they are all riding on the back of a poor, starving, in-chained, blindfolded person who is basically being treated like an animal. So in many ways, this symbolizes the third estate, and this is the first and second estate along with the king. And this is supposed to show how the first estate and the second estate are really using the third estate to benefit themselves and not to help out the third estate in any way, shape, or form. So the same kind of idea here, the old man is the third estate, and we got the first and second estate. 3, and this is a common theme everywhere in history, any revolution we talk about, this is like one of those things that like, just keep in the back of your mind. If you ever watch the Snickers commercials about like being hungry and then someone turns into someone else and they're all angry, that's what happens in France. There's a bad harvest in 1788, horrible harvest. People are starving in the streets. There's bread riots because people can't afford bread. You have peasants who can't have no food to grow because of the bad harvest. Therefore, they can't buy any food. It's a horrible situation. And when people are hungry, they get mad. And people are more likely to rise up and rebel against their government if they are hungry. Luckily, in the United States, we've never really had to, in the past 100 years, we really haven't had to face this. I think of it in terms of like a gas shortage, when people have to wait in line for gas or they might run out of gas, and people get so frustrated in the United States. Or people get stuck in traffic and they're just going crazy in the United States. Here we're talking about people can't eat. They don't have enough food to eat. And if they don't have enough food to eat, they're going to be mad. And generally people blame usually the government officials, and in some cases you're going to blame your noble who is living a luxurious life, and you as a peasant are struggling and starving. So we got hungry people are angry. I like to call it being hangry, and in this case it's going to lead people to rise up and rebel. Last but not least, if these situations existed, yet we had leaders who could solve this problem, we might be okay. But the problem that we're running into is the leaders of France during the French Revolution are generally two weak leaders. And here we have a picture of Louis XVI, who we'll talk more about in class. But just a quick overview, he is not trained to be king. He's not ready to be king. He's a very indecisive ruler. So his advisors will say to him, you need to change this and this and this, and we have to solve these problems. And he's kind of like, let me think about it. And they're like, people are rioting in the streets for bread. Like, we need to do something about this. And he's like, I'll think about it. So this Louis XVI, who is the great grandson of Louis XIV, the Sun King, is really not going to be able to solve these problems. And to make matters worse, he is married to a woman named Marie Antoinette, who is from Austria, who is notorious for spending and gets this reputation around France for spending lots of money. So there are people who are starving in the streets looking for something to eat, and she is, for example, wearing a new dress every day, and she gets this horrible reputation. She is from Austria, which also hurts her as well because it's not from France. So these two are in an arranged marriage. And as these problems get worse and worse as we lead up to 1789, when the French Revolution starts, they could make decisions that could solve these problems, yet they don't. So just a quick recap. We got 4 causes of the French Revolution: the Enlightenment, the unequal social classes, we have these weak leaders here, and people are hangry. And those 4 things are really going to be what set off this revolution. And what we see in this revolution are going to be similar themes that we're going to see in other revolutions, where people are angry, but they're going to use these Enlightenment ideas from the past to kind of inspire them and to basically make their new government. And they're going to use these Enlightenment ideas to kind of formulate their new government. So that's what we got. We'll go more over this in class, and also in the next one we'll get into what actually the French Revolution, what happens, and what are some of the outcomes. So as always, I hope you take some notes, hope you learn a little bit. Have a good day.